because the world loves a listicle, we were going to go through the top 5 gear upgrades for your band.
Yeah. Or actually kind of categories of upgrade, right? Like areas.
Yes. This is not going to be like an itemized list of things with links or anything. It's kind of more big picture type stuff. So the idea here is you've got a band and you're moving and grooving. You got some wind to your back and you're like, we need to invest in ourselves in order to increase the quality of our performances, increase the ability for us to do things. And so we need to look at gear on a total scale, not necessarily like what guitar should I buy or what pedals do I need. It's more of like what does the band need in order to continue down the road that they're going down. And we went back and forth and trying to like come up with just 5. And that was part of the challenge, was like, all right, let's turn this into categories. Cause if we did it by item, it would be 70 something things, but we got it down to a workable amount. So without further ado, here are the top 5 gear upgrades for your band. Number 1, and actually I think this is number 1.
If you're going to get one thing going that would improve your band, this is probably the one.
Yes. And that is in-ear monitors. Yep. And I think for a lot of our listenership, I think you and I talking, like, we've been on in-ears for so long that you don't necessarily think like, oh, this is something that, people are still kind of on the fence about, but we still have folks coming in talking about, we're still trying to make this transition and we've got holdouts or we don't know what to buy or the gear or whatever. So this is still stuff that is really important that people are actively considering. And I feel like every year I get the reminder like, oh, you put this get your band on in-ears for under $1,000 video. And every time I repost it, because I repost it every year, it gets a whole bunch of traction and people ask a whole lot of questions.
Yep.
So still something that people are trying to get into.
For sure.
The pluses are plentiful.
Yep.
What would you say was your biggest revelation or the biggest value add quality change when you switched from wedges to in-ears?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, first of all, you don't leave the show with your head ringing. I had a whole lot fewer headaches after shows and a lot less concern about my hearing. I had been feeling just in the period before kicking over to them that I needed some support with my voice. Oftentimes playing, in the gig context, I'd kind of lose my voice and I'd end up really pushing to get over top of the mix. And it was really, really hard. And then it was using IEMs that I realized, I can actually use the mix for what it is. I can put myself on top of the mix and, I don't have to in the middle of the show, get vocally pushy because, it's already there. And having a really clean mix in my ears with myself prominent in it gave me a lot more confidence in my singing, gave me a lot more confidence, particularly my falsetto. I was feeling like my falsetto just disappeared, but in fact, it's actually pretty decent if it's well mixed.
Yeah.
And so it gave me a lot more confidence as a vocalist, and then sent me back to revise my front of house mix, which I also drive as we play, so that it's not, that vocal quality isn't lost in the mix there too. It really is something to hear the band sound like a recording as you're playing it live. It's really, really amazing. And it took a lot, because like I say, I am the sound engineer and the guitarist and the singer and the set list maker and the stage sweeper and everything else, and getting to where I could trust that my mix was working in the room, even though that wasn't what I was listening to, was hard. But I do trust that now, and it's all very much worth it. Now you've just made the jump from mono to stereo.
Yes.
And that is a correspondingly big jump in my experience. I was mono for just a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was a great improvement over live monitoring. And then I went to stereo and it was as big an improvement.
Yeah. The things that changed for me, because I don't want to discount the fact that there is a transition. Like, there are things to get adjusted to.
For sure. Yeah.
For those of us who are vocalists, it does, it gives us the ability to increase our range and improve our stamina, but it also requires us to kind of relearn what the microphone does,
or maybe learn for the first time.
Right. I had this conversation with a friend of mine who was just like, tips for singing louder with more power. And I was like, don't. That's what microphones do.
Yep.
And then he was kind of like, oh, well, I mean, what about Lane Staley and what about Freddie Mercury? I was like, go back and listen to those.
Yeah.
Because what you think you're hearing, you're not. The microphone's doing that. And the easiest way to to show that to somebody, especially if they use, let's say, like a Lane Staley for an example, go back and listen to Unplugged. It's got nothing to do with volume. It's just it's in there.
Yep.
Unless you are trying to do like theater, you don't need to learn how to sing louder.
Nope.
And actually, the process of singing softer gives you a lot more latitude to do stuff. I had to learn to sing in ears because I was trying a lot of stuff that I couldn't do before. So that whole passaggio upper register thing, that was not something that I was able to do before I got on in-ears, because I learned how to maintain the pressure without having to adjust the amplitude of what I'm doing. And once you figure that part out, man, it opens the world up to you. Now, on one side, in-ears giving you unparalleled confidence in your vocals. It will also give you incredible insecurity about your guitar playing.
That's right, because you hear every clam, every one. Stuff that just flies by you in the room, you hear it loud and clear in the mix.
What I have found was that I actually, with in-ears, I play less.
Sure.
Because you hear what everything is doing and what is contributing to the overall soundscape. And what you realize is that if I continue to play the way that I was playing, I'm actually doing too much. I'm muddying up the waters there.
Right.
And that's where it gets really important as a player to learn the parts that you are supposed to be playing, because that separation is what actually makes the band sound better.
Yes.
So
yes, there's this thing called playing rests. That's a thing.
When I started doing like worship music, a term that I had never heard before was diamonds. And the term basically meaning that you're hitting a chord on the one and you don't hit it again until the one on the next bar. And, you know, before playing with in-ears, I would be like, wait, what? The idea that you would just play like, you know, a single chord and just let it ring? Blasphemy, balderdash.
Yeah, no, when you're listening to the mush of a room, right, it feels like you got to keep that mush alive with a lot of percussion, right, on the guitar.
Right.
Versus just like the beauty of letting a chord ring and having some dynamics. Like, yeah, in-ears make that possible.
I thought I was a good guitar player, and I'm probably a better guitar player now for it. But man, that transition, you're like, oh wow, this I don't like this.
Yeah,
but you get used to it. And overall, everything is gonna be better. Your hearing will be better. The band will sound better. You are able to implement things like click tracks and cues and that kind of stuff. And overall, the quality of your show can exponentially improve with making that one change.
Yep.
But in concert with that change, the second gear upgrade for your band that you should be considering is your sound gear.
Yes.
Specifically like your PA and your mixers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are operating off of mixers that wouldn't support a band's worth of IEMs. And you've got to get, you know, a mixer that has the right number of aux outs, ideally something that can save aux mixes, because you really don't want to rebuild all of those on your feet in every sound check. So a digital mixer, if you're not on one, is a very clear buy.
So when my band was touring, we had an in-ear rig, and it was an analog rack mounted mixer. And basically at that point they were building in-ear mixers that were basically just all auxes.
Yep.
And you had your little row of knobs, and you would twist your knobs. Like, I mean, you're doing the same thing on like the apps now, but like actual hardware. And there was no recall. There was none of that. You just hoped that everything was at least approximate by the time you got started. I think we take a lot of this stuff for granted because, again, I've been doing this in-ears for 20 years at this point.
Right.
But this week I had to explain what an aux was, like how in-ears on a mixer, on an analog mixer work, just the base concepts of those things. Still, not everybody knows about it.
Yeah. Before we move off of mixer, I think anyone who's looking to get into that, it can be done pretty cheap. There's a Behringer X-Air line that is sort of the canonical first step into it. It comes in a few different sizes, and none of them are that expensive. So if you are looking to make that jump into digital mixing, that is a good first step. I very much like my Soundcraft UI24R. Adam's been a fan of the Behringer X32 series, the X32 rack, and now the Wing rack. And I've said those just now in the order of spendiness.
Sure.
And so... those are the ones we can recommend. There are others. I looked at the Q-Pack
Yep.
from
Allen and Heath.
Allen Heath, thank you.
They just released an SQ rack.
Oh.
A next step up. Now it retails for $3,000.
Okay.
Hey, it's got bells and whistles.
I'm sure it's great.
If you're worried, I wonder if I could spend enough money. You never have to worry about that with digital mixers. There's always money to be spent.
For sure. Yeah.
But it's not as expensive as it could be.
That's right.
On top of that, talking about speakers, you want to look at stuff, powered speakers that maybe have better clarity. If you don't need stage volume, you could consider switching over to amp modelers or digital drums, heaven forbid. But all of those things will be investments in the overall soundstage that you are able to generate. In addition to making those changes, sometimes you need to invest in additional sound reinforcement to do that. So, maybe consider, if you were a band that was on wedges, maybe you take one of those wedges and you point it out in front in the center and make that a center fill for all of your high end stuff, your vocals and your guitars and that kind of thing. Yeah. So the way that you do things once everything is silent does shift. And there's some stuff that you may have to take into account in order to make it all work. But the overall product at the end of the day is so much better.
Yeah.
So much cleaner.
Yep.
The thing that I love to tell customers and clients when they reach out to us is, they're like, oh, we're in this tiny room and we can't be too loud. I was like, we can be as loud or as soft as you want us to be.
Right.
That's a really cool thing to be able to say. It may not be the cool thing to say, with other musicians, but when your job is to play private parties and their budgets are where they are, you being able to say, if we need to be speaking volume for this gig, not a problem. We can do that. Totally. Not a problem at all. And that's what's cool.
That is cool.
Next up on our list, number 3, I'm going with lights. If you are kind of deciding that you're going to try 4-walling events where you are providing all the production, lights are a big part of it.
That's right.
And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It can be. Again, lighting is one of those things where you can never spend enough money, but there are accessible points where you can add some stuff that will look good and improve the quality of your show.
For sure. I think that's true even if you're not doing 4-walling or bigger events. I mean, what do we used to say? Your band sounds great, but how does it look?
How does it look?
No one can tell if you're in the dark.
Oh man, great copy.
Yeah, I know. It was good. It was well written. So you and I have both worked with Chauvet 4 bars for years.
Yep.
Before starting to get into some upgrade path out of that. I now have a 4-pack of LED tubes from Both Lighting that do, driven by the Maestro DMX, do some very cool effects. And they just stand around the stage in a kind of a symmetrical pattern, and they interact with each other in interesting ways. I have 2 small moving head lights that similarly just do things, driven by Maestro without any particular need for manual intervention. And I think that the one show I've used them at, I think it was a really notable upgrade, and I'm really happy with it.
We had a situation where we played a municipal event, and they had lights provided, but we brought the Maestro and took what we have, these color picks that are also Chauvet, and instead of putting them on the ground, I got these tripod mic stands and stacked them vertically along the back line. And at the end of the show, the person who booked us, the person who runs that venue, goes, "What kind of lights are those?" And I turned to her and I go, "It's the ones that you have up front," because they had a whole bunch of them. I was like, "The thing that you're missing is this little box." Yeah. And the Maestro DMX was the thing that really kicked the whole thing up a notch.
Yep.
And we talk about that product because we truly believe in it. It's a fantastic product. It has made it's made a massive difference. It is one of those things. I mean, it's cliche to say that something's a game changer. It changed our game.
And so easily compared to like manual DMX programming and all of that nonsense you'd have to get into to produce that output so easily.
But not only that, it's how quickly you can adapt things to it. Also, we've been in rooms where the LED lights were just way too bright. It was just blowing people out. So you can just hit that little system brightness bar, like the whole system. You just drag it down until it makes sense in the room. On the flip side, on the show that we did on Valentine's Day, the room was really dark, and it became pretty apparent that if we didn't get some sort of front fill, like nobody's going to be able to see us. So I was able to take our 4 bars, which normally are a part of the light show. I moved them from the primary group to a tertiary group.
Yep.
And set everything to whitewash, and all they did was wash the front of the stage.
Nice.
I made that change in less than 5 minutes with maybe 30 minutes before downbeat, and it was easy to do. And if I wanted to put them back into the mix, I can literally fire the thing back up, make a couple of changes, and it'll be right back to where it was.
Yep.
So Maestro DMX, unbelievable value. If you are on the fence, don't be. Buy one. We'll put the discount code and the link in the show notes. You got to do it.
Yep. Big fan.
And again, this stuff is not super expensive. Those movers that you got, I got a similar pair. I think they were maybe 150.
Like $150 for a pair.
Yeah. It wasn't
on Amazon.
Yep.
And I reached out to Maestro and I said, I bought these junk things, and they came back to me with the profile for those.
Yep.
The things, like they could do it with no problem. I sent them a photo of the DMX layout that was in its manual. So whatever, one way or another, they were able to come back with exactly what I needed to just drop into it and go. So
yep,
it's perfect.
And you can find this stuff secondhand all over the place. Like, lights can be expensive, but they can be reasonably affordable if you need them to be. If that's what you're looking to do, if you're like, hey, this is the next thing that we need to do, I can't stress it enough. It makes a huge difference.
Yep. I'll tell you one thing I like about these both lighting tubes is that they are battery powered, and the battery runs for 12 hours. So no problem getting through a gig. And they have built-in wireless DMX.
That's cool.
So you literally power them up, stand them there. The Maestro just finds them. Well, I guess it doesn't. It's broadcasting and they're listening, but they know I've got them on the same channel, so they know what they're doing.
I didn't know that about DMXs. Like, I was worried that, was I going to have to put these in a particular order? Like, how do I wire them up, whatever? But it doesn't matter. As long as they're on the right channel,
right.
Everybody can hear, and do what they need to do. But I am so ready to move to wireless DMX, because hardwiring these things is a real pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the next thing on my list, is to get these plugged in wirelessly, because it sucks otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4 on our list of top 5 gear upgrades to your band is stage branding. Now, this was a nebulous term that we had to invent on the spot, because we couldn't quite land the plane on what it was that we were trying to convey. But we landed on stage branding. Now, Dan, what would you say stage branding entails?
There's a ton of things. There's a ton of things it could encompass. It could be, expandable signs, the pop-up signs that people use. It could be, I have now an LED neon Dan Ray music sign that looks great and stands at the back of my stage when I do solo stuff. It could be a, great big 10-foot sheet thing. What do you call that?
A logo banner.
A logo banner, something like that that you put at the top of the stage. It could be content you're putting up on an LED wall behind you. It could be all kinds of things. And so you want to think about what you might add to your show that would attach your name to it, attach your vibe to it, have, something memorable happen about, it's not just a band. It's, this is the, whatever it is, those guys. That'd be a good name for a band, those guys.
Nice.
And also, I've seen people do things that are, well, you have Rubik's Cubes.
Yep.
I have kind of waved my hand toward doing that, but I'm a ways yet from really having them. I once saw a blues band, woman-fronted, originals blues band, get set up. It was at a little festival thing, blues festival thing. And they did their line check or whatever. And then she brought out 3 vintage suitcases and laid them kind of on the stage. And the top one was open and the 2 beneath were kind of at angles underneath it. It looked like it was stacked for travel.
Yeah.
They never referenced it. They never did anything with it. It was just there on stage looking cool and being part of their sort of traveling blues band vibe. And it was just a nice little touch. It was a really nice thing.
So when I posted pictures from our stage from this last gig in the Patreon slide, people were asking about the Rubik's Cubes, and they were like, oh man, now I maybe like do like a Game Boy or like Tamagotchis for their 90s thing, or like a giant jazz cup, if you know what that pattern looks like.
Yep.
I saw an 80s band that had like literal arcade cabinets on stage. That was a really cool vibe.
Cool.
I saw a band that had the Bill and Ted phone booth
Nice.
on stage. I thought that was a cool idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just whatever you can do to kind of set the mood. So somebody walks in the room, they see the gear on stage and they go, this is what I should expect
Yeah.
out of this.
Yeah.
But to your point, talking about like LED walls and things like that, a lot of times we don't travel with those things. We don't have them,
For sure.
but you should always be prepared to provide that kind of media in the event that a venue does have those things.
Yeah.
Because if you do, it's an immediate just value add. Just like off the charts, seeing your band's logo, static, animated. I mean, animated if you can do it with any sort of just kind of cool visuals behind you that work in conjunction with, again, the kind of music you're doing.
Yep.
You know, I've got a flash drive that's got a couple of things that we can pull out if need be. I also have all that media on iCloud Drive. So even if I don't have access to my actual media, I can just log onto a web browser and download it on any computer I need to.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, it doesn't cost any money. And if you don't have the resources or know how to do it, there's guys in our community that do that kind of stuff. Hit up Adam Moskowitz. That's like his little side venture.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
graphics for other bands.
Yep. It's got a whole hustle working.
And, you know, we'll help you out too. I've got all that kind of stuff. Motion backgrounds are easy to procure. You can find them all over the internet, and slap your logo on top of that, make like a 30 to 60 second loop. You're off to the races. That's all you need.
Very good.
Think about that. Think about the kind of stuff that you could add to your gig that would set the intention of the evening.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about decade stuff. You know, 80s is a pretty easy kind of visual or aesthetic to wrap your brain around. But there's so many different ones. When I was doing Convoy, the Southern rock outlaw country deal, lead singer got 2 fog machines and some aluminum piping like you would use for like venting in like up in an attic.
Yeah.
Put them on either side of the drum kit, and it looked like big old like smokestacks out of like a semi.
Love it.
And then two headlights in front of the kit. It took no time at all.
But it's brilliant.
But it immediately set the vibe.
Yep.
So think outside the box. It doesn't have to be anything super technical or crazy, but just something as simple as a trip to Home Depot with a couple of, you know, fog machines. You've got something that anybody in the audience is never going to forget, you know?
Yep. Listen, my previous band, the Clanky Lincolns, we had an Abe, our logo, our mascot. We made an Abe puppet that was 10 feet tall, rode on a backpack. My wife Marcy puppeted him many times. Nobody else was doing anything at all like that. It was clear branding because it was obviously us. Nobody else did it, you know, had like a character, a mascot.
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing.
It's very Iron Maiden of you.
Yeah, well, there you go. It was fun and really stood us out. Really was a demarcator of us stepping up our stage game.
Yeah. So think about that. Next time you guys have rehearsal, just think about what wild stuff could you add to your normal gigs to make them like, holy crap, this band Iron Maiden did at this bar the other night. It was crazy.
That's right.
They had their own Eddie.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know, version of that you have.
Yeah.
All right. So here's number 5. And after all of these things, it kind of feels like a bit of, like ending on a bit of a but I think if you have gone to the trouble of doing the other 4, the 5th one is kind of a non-negotiable, frankly.
True.
So number 5, as far as gear upgrades for your band, is a decent website.
Yep. And frankly, if you've done all the rest of these things, you should have plenty of content and plenty of brand thinking, plenty of messaging for a really great website.
And there's been a lot of chatter about whether a website is necessary for what we do. And I can say with absolute certainty that it is. It is paramount that you have one. Because as easy as it is to direct somebody to your Instagram account or your Facebook page where you may have a decent amount of followers, anybody who wants to book you for more than a bar gig is not going to do that if that's all they have to send up the chain.
That's right.
That website is absolutely the barrier of entry to get access to those next level gigs.
Yeah.
And our website is the sole source of our gigging deal. All of our scheduling comes through the website. We don't pay for ads. We don't do a whole lot of promotion outside of it. Between the agency site and the band's personal website, that is where all of our gigs are coming from. We may get a stray DM here or there, but most of them end up going through the website by the end of it.
Sure. You know, imagine a booker, usually, you know, in a medium-sized company, one office. It's a secretary maybe has been asked to find the band, and that person's going to do some research and find a band and forward it to the boss. And what you want to forward to the boss is something that's worthy of being forwarded to the boss and not like a Facebook page.
Yeah. And they're going to find you based on whatever it is that they're searching for.
That's right.
So you need to make sure that your branding and all that stuff is dialed in, because if they are looking for the kind of band that you are, they're going to type in genre, cover band, city you live in. And so you better make sure that your site looks slick enough and is getting enough traction that it shows up towards the top of that list.
Right.
I don't know if I can do this because it's probably biased based on just my browsing. But if I go to Google and I type in Atlanta 80s band.
Here, I'll try it.
So we are fourth one down.
I have it fourth one down too.
And the band above that is not even a band. It's an agency one on top of that.
I think the two on top of that are agency ones.
Well, Electric Avenue is the guys that I used to play with. So they are the number one. And if there was anything above that, there's what I'm actually really surprised by is that there's a very specific band that's doing very well and probably at the same level as the number one pick. I don't think they've been around quite as long. And it's probably just a matter of time. That second one is hilarious though, because I don't see them playing at all anymore. So, but they've been around forever. So that might be why, but that's it. So if somebody put Atlanta 80s band, you know, they're probably going to look at the top 5 and then look for certain things, you know, look at your branding, look at your visuals. Like, what about this is appealing? And then the next thing that they're going to do is check for pricing.
Yep.
So you just want to make sure that you are at least conveying your value in the material that you're putting out and on the site. But our site, Bandzoogle.
There you go. Yeah, mine too.
Took a little bit of finagling to get it to do what I wanted it to do. But again, I was being very specific and picky because, again, it's an 80s band. It's got to look a certain way. But I mean, I think we pay like $15 a month for it. And it is, I mean, we book one gig and it's paid off for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
You know? So easy, justifiable pricing for that. Another thing to think about doing is buying up other URLs that redirect to that page. Because I don't just own membersonlyatl.com. I own ATL80sband.com. I own Atlanta80sband.com. I own, I've got like probably 7 or 8 kind of tangent sites that all redirect to that.
Yep, me too.
So think about that. Be creative. But that's it.
That's it. That's all you got to do.
That's all you have to do.
Just those 5 things.
Just those 5 things. Could you put a price tag on that? You should not. You could, but don't.
You will, but it'll be worth it.
Yes, I agree. But don't put a price tag on that before you start making decisions, because that's where it could get pretty scary.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this is basically like my life's work in those 5 things.
Right.
But it's also the reason why we're able to command the price that we command and make the money we make. So
for sure.
But I did have that moment this past gig where I was like looking at the stage. I was like, I own all of this. Like that was, it's just a strange sensation.
Yeah.
That's some idea that I had has like turned into like physical inventory.
Right. That I have to put in a car.
Yeah. If there's anything that we didn't mention that you think we should, let us know. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. Leave a comment on the YouTube version of this video. But yeah, this is the stuff that is going to get you from point A to point A for more money. You're doing the same thing, but maybe you're doing it with a light show and it looks cooler.
Yeah, better, finer, faster.
Yes. Any other parting words?
No, go do that.